Today's episode of Behind These Walls takes us to the Courthouse Mill Pond, located next to historic Boykins Tavern off Courthouse Highway. The mill, once located here, ground corn until 1955, but its history dates back to the 17th century. Here at the headwaters of the Western Branch River is land originally patented in 1661. In 1710, Arthur Purcell purchased 2 acres here to establish a grist mill. It was in operation prior to 1730. Requests were made to the Isle of Wight County Court in 1734 and 1745 to establish a grist mill in the same vicinity. The court ordered the building of a dam and the impounding of the waters for its operation, creating the Great Swamp. Water from the swamp still flows down into the lake at Burnt Mills today. The mill and property had a succession of owners. In 1767, William Ponsonby advertised the property for sale at public auction. By 1770, a sawmill had also been established here. These structures were among the first buildings constructed in fledgling settlements. Sawmills were essential for the processing of natural materials, while grist mills were a necessity for the processing of grains, a crucial component of commerce and the colonial diet. Numerous rivers and creeks in Virginia furnished favorable sites for grist mills, and Isle of Wight County had several dotting its waterways. Wilson's Mill, circa 1650 on Lawns Creek, was likely the first mill constructed in the county. Other mills could soon be found at Mount Holly Creek, Wren's Mill, Mackey's Mill, and a corn mill at the head of the Pagan Creek. Grist mills used 2 stones, each weighing about 3,000 pounds, which never touch, instead rotating so closely that their friction shreds the grains. The lower stone, known as the bed stone, is stationary, while the runner stone rotates above it. Water supplies the power to rotate the stones. This mill had no exterior wheel. Instead, it was powered by water dropping down into the mill itself. After the mill ceased operations, its former stones graced the front of the Millstone Coffee Shop at Wall's Country Store, located in front of the mill site on Courthouse Highway. In colonial America, construction and maintenance of mills and their machinery, as well as care of the rudimentary roads that led to these sites, was demanding work, typically carried out by multiple individuals. In 1773, owners Thomas Brown and John Day placed an advertisement in the Virginia Gazette for a miller, seeking an industrious, sober person capable of managing a saw and grist mill. In a postscript, Day noted, "I have a Negro fellow who can keep the saws in good order, so that a person's not being acquainted with that branch of the business will be no objection." Francis Boykin owned both the mill and Boykins Tavern in the late 18th century. In his will, he left the tavern, plantation, sawmill, grist mill, and 28 slaves to his wife and son. These enslaved individuals likely labored in both mills and were responsible for the maintenance of the mill dam and associated buildings and machinery. A noteworthy American publication was the 1795 The Young Millwright and Miller's Guide. It benefited generations of millers with practical instructions for building and operating mills. Traditionally, farmers brought corn to the mill for grinding, and the miller kept a portion of the corn in return. This was referred to as the miller's toll. By 1645, laws prohibited millers from taking more than 1/6 of the grain ground as their toll. Penalties were steep for those using inaccurate scales or taking more than the legal share. Near the mill was the miller's house. This small frame structure survived into the 1950s and is seen here to the right of the mill. It had a simple floor plan. The ground floor included a main room, bedroom, and kitchen, while a staircase led to a small upstairs bedroom. In the 1920s and 1930s, Isle of Wight County was home to a closely knit community of farmers. This was important and necessary to the mill's survival, as heavy downpours required nearby neighbors to assist with the raising of the mill gates so that the mill would not wash away or knock down the closely located bridge. When he was a young boy, Lewis Pulley, artist and retired Isle of Wight County farmer, remembers taking corn to the mill for grinding in the 1940s and 50s.
Man, he'd go there and cut it off. He was the miller. A lot of times he just took some of the meal.
He also remembers watching the mill operate.
Would turn the water on, and then when he turned the water on, everything in the mill began to start The wheels were working. The water had to get up high enough when they went through there to turn the milling wheels. Made the best cornbread. Oh, it was interesting. It was clicking and clacking and banging the wheels. The old iron wheels were turning, then the corn would come out and it had to go round and round.
Locals enjoyed fishing at the Courthouse Mill Pond. Although it was only 12 feet at its deepest, the pond held plenty of pike, bass, and flyers.
When we were 15, 16 years old, we were fishing all around that pond till we got run off by the woman that used to hang around down there.
Around 1945, the city of Norfolk purchased water rights in approximately 1 acre of land containing the mill from James Owens, a longtime miller. The acquisition of the Burnt Mill watershed enabled Norfolk to establish a dam to pipe water into Lake Prince, one of the city's largest reservoirs that remains in use today. Other water rights and land purchases along the 5-mile course were made in the ensuing years. The mill successfully ground corn until 1955, but over the next 3 years it fell into disrepair. In 1958, the Isle of Wight County Board of Supervisors considered purchasing the mill site for development as a public fishing and recreation spot. At that point, the mill itself had deteriorated beyond repair. The mill's roof had caved in and its floors were no longer stable. An agreement could not be reached. The Board of Supervisors requested the mill be demolished, but in the fall of 1959, the mill pond emptied when the mill gates collapsed, and the workers from the city of Norfolk removed the mill. The community landmark, which ground corn for more than 300 years, was no more. Today, you can still see remnants of the mill's foundation next to Boykin's Tavern. In local grocery stores, stone ground corn is now easily purchased, but none of the packaging lists Isle of Wight County's former grist mills among its origins.
It was interesting. I wish it was like it now. It was a different world back then.